The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Citro. I am the chairman of the City of Tampa CRA Board. And this special called meeting of the City of Tampa CRA Board. Would the CRA Secretary, the City Clerk, take a roll call of the CRA Board at this time?
Yes, Chairman. Carlson?
Here.
Dingfelder?
Here.
Goods?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
Miranda?
Here.
Vieira?
Here.
And Citro.
I am here. Thank you very much for all joining us on this emergency meeting. Today's special meeting of the CRA is called by me pursuant to Article 2, Section 3 of the bylaws of the CRA. The sole purpose of today's meeting is to review and discuss available options for conducting future CRA meetings while the state of emergency is in effect as related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nothing else should be discussed, nor no CRA board business can be conducted today. Before we start the CRA board discussion on this topic, let me ask John Bennett, the city's chief of staff, and then our CRA director, Michelle Van Loan, if they have anything that they would like to say about the conduct of future CRA meetings while the COVID-19 state of emergency is in effect. Chief Bennett.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning. Actually, good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Board, and good afternoon, public. I'd just like to open up with the fact that, obviously we're under a state of emergency, local state of emergency. We're under a recently issued order from the governor, and those dynamics of safer at home are in play almost every 24 hours on the way we're operating and adapting over the last several weeks. Our goal today is to go over the possibilities to continue to move CRA business forward. And with that, I will turn it over to our director, Michelle Van Loan, to talk about the last meeting and what the current state of doing CRA business looks like.
Thank you, Chief Bennett. Good afternoon, Michelle Van Loan, CRA Director. Good afternoon to all our CRA board members. Welcome back, and to the public in general. I just want to let you all know that for the past couple of weeks, I have been at the Recovery Center, our call center, listening to the concerns of our businesses and our local community. Our CRA boards, or our CRA staff across all the CRAs have been actively working and able to answer phone calls and emails for anyone who has been reaching out to us. Since our March 12th meeting, we met March 12th, and then the following week, we were in full-blown coronavirus response as far as our employees working from home and our now slightly limited ability and the extra efforts we have to make to reach out to our community. So I just have a couple of things follow up from March 12th. First, I know it sounds like housekeeping, just a reminder to all of you, we do have our annual report for the CRAs that was due. The state of Florida did not grant us any kind of delay in requirements, so it has been posted online since that time a few weeks ago, but it was due March 31st. So I know right after we presented the draft to you that we went into coronavirus, but over the next week, if all of you can review that again and get your edits back to us, we can finalize that for when we do have a meeting. And pending any questions at the end of this meeting, I would now like to turn it over to Morris Massey to talk about some of the differences and the challenges we face as the CRA agency versus your council roles, and the differences in how we are managed under the state executive orders. Morris?
This is Deputy City Attorney Morris Massey. Thank you, Michelle. The Community Redevelopment Agency, the CRA Board, is a separate legal entity, even though it consists of all the members of City Council. We are still subject to the various orders that are in effect by the county, the state, and the mayor. But as you all know, the CRA Board controls really the CRA business and the CRA budget. So to the extent that actions need to be taken, or you all want to take action as an agency in connection with this emergency, then we do need to discuss the ability for you all to have a meeting while we are under the state of emergency. And I know that Chief Bennett and Ms. Grimes, who went through a very detailed discussion of the various options available for meetings of City Council, the same options really would be open relative to meetings of the CRA agency. And so, I can go through those briefly. We went through a, virtual meeting with public participation via email and or voicemail. Then a hybrid sort of meeting where we would have a quorum physically present with 2 or 3 members then attending virtually, where we could provide an option for people to participate virtually by either email or voicemail, or we could provide some limited opportunities for folks to attend the meeting, but it would have to be done so in compliance with all the emergency orders that are now in effect. And so the 6 feet distance, no more than 10 people in a room sort of requirements would have to apply in those situations. The other option that we discussed when you were in City Council session was the fully present meeting scenario, which is even more difficult and raises a lot of risk from a health and safety perspective from a COVID-19. So those are really, in a nutshell, the options that we need to talk about today. And about if you all number one, want to have a CRA meeting in the immediate future, discussions about when that meeting would occur, and a discussion of how that meeting would be conducted, whether it be virtually or really a hybrid, I think are really the two most viable options. So I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. At this time, I'm not going to call on each of the CRA board members alphabetically. And I would like for your input as to the future board meetings for the CRA to be conducted during this state of emergency. Mr. Carlson, excuse me, your ideas?
I think it's the same as the last meeting, which is that we should meet to get information, and then as soon as we can meet and vote. We've got some pressing issues that are up. And at one point, I'd like to include a budget reevaluation discussion to see the sensitivity models that you all are running, to see what this might do to the budget that we have and the obligations that we have out. But I know we were talking about Fair Oaks Community Center and some other things like that we need to bring back up. And then to the extent that we can talk about anything related to assisting small businesses and independent businesses that isn't prohibited as a service, we ought to discuss at some point too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Carlson. Councilman Dingfelder.
Okay, a couple of trivial things. Michelle, you had mentioned about call center questions and concerns, and I know they've been coming in at thinking about the rate of 100 a day. That was the last statistic I heard. I think it'd be helpful to CRA and to council if we got a summary, or if a summary exists of what type of questions and concerns are coming in, especially, well, both from the public and from business in general. So if that document exists, that'd be great to share. In regard to the, I think I agree with Councilman Carlson. My critical question right now is it essential? Are there any essential critical issues that the CRA needs to vote on in April? And then answer that question, and then I've got a follow-up, Mr. Chair. And that's to Michelle.
Right. Yeah, sorry, I had to take it off mute. Michelle Van Loan, CRA Director. For April, our critical issues are mostly along the lines of we're delaying projects for another month. We have the ability to delay those projects. Our biggest issue, let me back up a second. Our challenge we have is that we also cannot have CAC meetings at this time. So for example, we had the East Tampa Strategic Action Plan update. We had wanted to have another CAC meeting prior to discussing that and bringing it to you for that final vote of reprogramming the money. So because most of our processes involve additional public meetings prior to the CRA board meeting, that's where we run into stumbling blocks on that. Our second issue is that unlike for city council, the mayor cannot just sign off on consent agenda items as she does for other issues. So we can develop a list in immediacy. I think we can manage without an April meeting, but if the CRA board felt comfortable with a CRA board meeting, there are 2 or 3 items that we probably would like to bring forward.
The last thing you said was, is that in April, and is that just sort of we would like to, or it's really critical?
Trying to, I would say, balancing the comfort level of trying to bring people into a meeting. If the comfort level is there, we can manage for another month until May. So I do not, trying to, again, just like you did during your council session, to say that we can't manage and want to put people at risk, I would fall on the side of caution and say that we can manage until May to have a CRA board meeting.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. My last point, Mr. Chairman, and this is more in terms of a comment and a suggestion, and I mentioned this privately to, I think, Ms. Grimes yesterday, is our quorum problem, our physical quorum problem hinges on a statute. And the governor's tried to undo that, but that's questionable whether or not the governor can do that. So what I would ask is not only of the CRA context, but I would ask Michelle to contact the CRA Association, the state association, and I'd ask Ms. Grimes to contact the Florida League of Cities and Florida Association of Counties as appropriate, and urge our legislators that if they're getting together for any reason in Tallahassee, budget reasons or business reasons, that we get those associations to put together a one-page or a one-paragraph bill that waives the quorum requirement during a state of emergency, the physical quorum requirement. And obviously that's bigger than all of us, but I think that we are a major city. Every single jurisdiction in the state is going through what we're going through right now. And if they could waive that quorum requirement, then we'd be in a lot better place to continue to do business telephonically and safer than we can if we're pushed to meet with 4 people in the same place. So anyway, that's just my suggestion. Obviously no vote required or allowed for that, but that would be a strong suggestion to our staff to urge the legislature to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dingfelder. Mr. Goods.
So along those same lines, Mr. Dingfelder, I've been on several other, belong to several other organizations, and they've been using this Zoom that has video where you can see the person's voting. I'm just wondering, would that be acceptable? Because you have all the members that will be seeing one another and seeing their votes. So I'm just curious if that could be a way to, let's say, get around it, but a possible way of having a quorum. Maybe legal could look into that, because again, I've been on several calls that I've been on these Zoom monitors and I'm seeing every different member, vote and so forth. So that's one area I think we could look into. And secondly, any of the critical issues in reference to the CRA, we've got to meet somehow to get some of these things off the table. If it can be delayed to May, that's fine. But if Michelle deems that they're critical, we need to find a form of communication that's going to work, and we can have a quorum. I don't have too much anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Goods. Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If we can delay critical things, into May and get through the stay-at-home order, until April 30th, whatever it is, then we figure it out from there. If we meet virtually, telephonically, however it is, as long as it's within the parameters of the law and done correctly, I'm fine. That's it.
Hey, Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. I agree with council members that spoken, members of the board of the CRA, and I believe it's up to the legal department, someone who has the ability to tell us what we can do, what we can't do. I agree with Mr. Dingfelder's assessment that if something's going to happen in Tallahassee, that at least we have those in power to tell us what we can do. If we can get that item changed so we can have special meetings virtually during the emergency, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councilman Miranda. Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. I'm in agreement with my colleagues on this issue. In particular, Councilman Dingfelder on getting some sort of resolution from the legislature on this apparent conflict between the statute and then Governor DeSantis's order. To the extent there is one, we obviously need clarification on that. But like everybody, we want to get back on these issues as soon as possible. But we want to do it in a way that is safe and legally sufficient. And obviously, as soon as we can, we will. And so I agree.
Thank you very much, Councilman Vieira. I see we're all in agreement. But the number one thing with the CRA board going further is the public participation. That's what the CRA board, in my opinion, is all about. The percolation of ideas and needs from the public going to their CDCs, CACs, and then coming to us. I still feel that that is very, very essential. So if I can ask Ms. Fanlone, Chief Bennett, and the legal staff, I would like to call another special meeting next Thursday at 9 o'clock to be held in accordance with this procedure that we've been discussing right now. And at that time, we'll discuss possible grants and loans and businesses located in the CRAs. Let me know if any of you have any conflict with that the 9th at 9 a.m. And hopefully we can talk about this much further after we've given staff enough time to look at different ways in which we can make decisions. Councilman Vieira, do you have any problem with that date and that time?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Miranda, do you have any problem with that date and that time? Councilman Miranda?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Maniscalco?
No, sir, no issues at all.
Thank you. Councilman Goods?
Available.
Thank you very much. Councilman Dinkfelder?
That sounds fine, Mr. Chairman, and I had one other comment, and this ties into our earlier meeting as council, is if we can get public comment tagged on in the form of recordings, 2-minute recordings prior to our CRA meetings, even if they're update meetings, at least that way we can have direct input from the community and proceed accordingly. So hand in hand with how we discuss that at City Council, if staff could look into that, I'm sure everybody would agree with it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Dinkfelder. Councilman Carlson?
I'm okay meeting then. I thought that Chief Bennett said earlier that Thursday mornings were a problem because of the emergency policy group or something like that, but it's okay with me.
All right. Well, before we go any further, Chief, do you have a problem with it 9 o'clock, or you feel confident that Ms. Van Loan will be able to handle that meeting?
John Bennett, Chief of Staff, I have full confidence in Director Michelle Van Loan's capability, and I appreciate Board Member and Councilman Carlson bringing that up. There is the Emergency Policy Group meeting at 1:30. However, if there was a reasonable scope of business for the CRA meeting that started at 9 a.m., I don't anticipate a lot of challenges of getting that done in, again, a limited agenda, limited scope. The larger issue is putting a virtual or a full council meeting on Thursdays until the COVID response settles some.
But and I agree with you with Ms. Van Loan. I was just wanted to make sure that you could also make the meetings also. So 9 o'clock next Thursday is fine with you?
Yeah, if my presence is required, I could make the 9 o'clock for a brief amount of time.
I thank you very much, Chief. All right, Ms. Van Loan, is there anything else you wish to add at this time?
Good morning, Michelle Van Loan, or good afternoon. No, I just want you to know, all of CRA Board and the public, we are working on what our potential options are to help our communities, and we hope by next Thursday to at least be able to bring to you an outline of what that may look like. But again, I don't think we would be, at the scope we're looking, I don't think we would be at the point of saying, yes, I need definite approval on April 9th, but we do want to fill you in the direction that we're going. That would be it. Thank you.
All right, and you still want us to take a look at the budget that you presented us earlier?
You still have that budget. It's not that you need to look at the budget itself I presented. We sent out the electronic version of the annual report, the draft. We can resend that out again. It was also attached with all of your backup for the March 12th meeting, but I can resend that out to everyone and just ask you to review that again and let me know if you have any edits or changes by next week. Thank you.
Would you mind doing that for us, please, and thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Massey, are you still there?
I'm still here. I did want to, this is Deputy City Attorney Morris Massey. I did want to clarify that what we're talking about next week is a virtual meeting, much like we're holding today. If we're not taking any action whatsoever, we're just hearing the outline of a proposed business grant program potentially. then I'm not sure public participation is absolutely required since you won't be taking any action. But if you want to take any action next week, we probably do need to institute some sort of form of public participation before then. And I would assume that if we're talking about a virtual meeting next Thursday, that form, if we're able to do it, would be by email and or voicemail. But I wanted clarification on those two things. So.
All right, when will we be able to put out, when is the soonest we can put out notice for that meeting? Would that be Monday?
We should be able to put out notice for that meeting, I would think, by tomorrow.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So that if we decide, if the public wishes to speak, they can do that via email. All right.
We'll have to describe in that notice, actually, Chairman, this is Morris Massey, Deputy City Attorney, how the public can participate. And make it clear that we are holding the meeting virtually by communication media technology, and then clarify really in that notice and everything that we send out how the public can participate in that meeting.
All right, thank you for the clarification on that, Mr. Massey. Before we go to, I would like to thank everybody for being involved in this today, legal staff, excuse me, Ms. Van Loan, Mr. Bennett, and all the board members for being here today, for taking the time to discuss this. Before we go to adjournment, is there anybody who wishes to include anything else at this time?
No, sir.
All right, I thank you all for taking the time out to do this today, and I wish you all health and safety. Remember, be nice to everybody, and we will meet again next Thursday, the 9th at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.